Hello class, today we have a lesson about teaching setting and finding that in a story. So we'll start out by reading the I can statement and the reading standard for this lesson. And I would have these displayed on the board if it was an actual classroom. So, the I can statement. I can identify the setting of a story or passage and explain how that affects what is going on in the text. So there's that one. And then the reading standard is describe characters, settings, and major events in a story using key details in order to make meaning of the story development. So this is obviously part of a unit because you're finding or describing characters, settings, and major events. So setting is just a part of it. So before we start, I want to explain what a setting is to you a little bit. So the setting is the time or place that a story occurs. So sometimes the author makes this setting very evident by providing pictures or explaining it in great detail, but sometimes the author doesn't add this to their story. They make it kind of hard to understand the setting, so you have to be really smart in paying attention to the words they use to describe where they are or the time that they're in. So, we're going to read the book Rainbow Fish and the Big Blue Whale. So, I'm going to read this, and as I read, be thinking in your minds what the different settings in this book are. So, I know there's one main setting that you'll find pretty early on, but within that big setting, there are other places that the fish visit. So pay attention to those, and then after I read, we'll share what we think. So, Rainbow Fish and the Big Blue Whale. A long way out in the deep blue sea, Rainbow Fish and his friends swam happily through the reef. Each of them had a glittering silver scale, except for one little striped fish, but he belonged to the group anyway. When the fish were hungry, they ate tiny krill. There seemed to be endless supplies of the delicious shrimp. Rainbow Fish only needed to glide gently through the water with his mouth open to catch as many as he wanted. It was a wonderful life. One day, a gentle old whale swam by the reef and decided to stay. He liked the spot since he too ate the krill that were so plentiful there, and he enjoyed being around the glittering fish. Often he drifted along, watching them for hours, admiring their beautiful silvery scales. Before long, the fish with the jagged fins noticed the whale watching them. "Why is he looking at us like that?" he asked the others. He was in a particularly bad mood that day. See how he's staring at us?" he went on irritably. "Who knows what he's thinking?" After that, all the fish grew more and more suspicious of the whale. "Look at that giant mouth," said one. "Soon the krill will be all gone." Rainbow Fish began to worry. Until now, the fish had always been able to eat their fill. What if the whale did eat up all the krill? And why did he keep staring at them? Was he planning to eat them too? One day, the whale swam quite near the school of glittering fish. Panicked, the fish with the jagged fins sounded the alarm. "Look out," he called. "The wicked whale is after us." When the whale heard that, he was hurt at first, but soon he grew very angry. "I'll show them," he thought. "I'll teach them a lesson." So the great blue whale shot into the middle of the school and lashed out with his gigantic tail, sweeping the sparkling fish in all directions. The terrified fish fled, racing towards a crack in the reef for safety. But the whale didn't leave them alone. He followed Rainbow Fish and his friends all the way back to their cave. So pay attention where they're going on this page. That could be part of the setting. The blue whale swam back and forth, casting sinister glances at the little fish. They were trapped. "I told you that whale was dangerous," whispered the fish with the jagged fins. "We have to watch out for him." After a while, the whale calmed down. He made one last pass, then disappeared behind the reef. Nervous but driven by hunger, the fish cautiously left their cave and swam off in search of food. But the battle with the whale had left its mark. All the krill had been driven off. "This is silly," declared Rainbow Fish. "Before we played happily in the sea, now we hide in terror in our cave. Before there were always enough food for everyone. Now we have nothing. We must make peace with the whale." The other fish were all too afraid to approach the whale. It was up to Rainbow Fish. The whale stared at Rainbow Fish suspiciously. "Please, let's talk," said Rainbow Fish. "This fight was all a big mistake. It drove off the krill, and now we're all hungry." The two talked for a long time. The whale told Rainbow Fish how hurt and angry their hostile words had made him. "I never meant to harm you," said the whale. "Just scare you a little." Rainbow Fish was ashamed. "I'm sorry," he said. "But when we saw you watching us all the time, we were afraid you might eat us." The whale looked surprised. "I watched you only because your shining scales are so pretty," he said. They both laughed. "Come now," said the whale. "Let's find new hunting grounds." So Rainbow Fish and his friends, protected by their new friend the big blue whale, swam off together in search of a new home rich with krill. And before long, none of them could remember what the terrible fight had been about. The end. So obviously this probably isn't a book I would use to teach setting, but because I'm stuck at home, I don't have many books, so I just kind of had to wing it with this one. But after I read this, we would go around and the students could share a few settings they saw in the book. So they'd share the obvious, the ocean, and then another setting that was pretty important to the theme of the story was the cave that they hid in from the whale. So they could share that as a setting. And then there's like a coral reef that they go to where they find the krill and all those things. So there's a few different settings in this book that they could identify. So after the book, I'm going to split the class up into groups, and we're going to complete this worksheet. I had to make the worksheet on my own because I couldn't print it, but we have to complete the worksheet, and then you're going to present in front of the class the setting of the story you'll be assigned. So I'm going to split the groups up probably based on ability or like reading levels. So they'd be with people that can read on the same level as them. And one of the books that I would assign a group is The Snowy Day. So this would probably be for like a lower group because the setting's pretty obvious in this book. So I would give them this worksheet where they would write their group members' names, the title of the book, and then answer these two questions to kind of guide what they would present in front of the class. Because I know since this is a first grade lesson, they might be nervous going up in front of the class. So the two questions are, explain the setting of the book you were assigned, and how does the setting affect what is happening in the story? But before we did this, I would play this video. Let me pull it up here. Because we did just read a story, so they'd been sitting there for a while listening to me talk, so we'd play this video.
Story Elements for Kids. What is a setting? By Teaching Without Frills. Story elements are the different parts of a fiction story. The setting is an important story element. Can you figure out the definition of setting from the following examples? The setting might be a hot, sunny day at the beach during the summertime. Or it could be a cold, rainy night at a haunted house in October. So what do you think the definition of setting is? Pause here to think, or keep watching to find out. Setting is the time and place of a story. It often answers the questions when and where. The time of a story may be in the past or in the future, in the daytime or at night, in the summer or winter. A story may take place in a school, in a jungle, in a big city, in the desert, or in a variety of other places. We can also use adjectives or describing words to tell about the setting, like if it's sunny, cold, bright, busy, or spooky. You can determine the setting of a story by looking at the illustrations and finding information in the text. Let's try it. I was walking in the park on a warm day. How would you describe this setting? The text tells you I'm in a park, it's warm, and it's daytime. The illustration shows flowers and birds and the sun. I think it might be spring. So we could describe the setting as a warm spring day in the park. So remember, setting is the time and place a story happens. What settings have you seen in stories before? If you liked this,
then I would pause the video there and have the students explain different settings that they've seen in stories they've read, because it is first grade, so they're like starting to read a ton of books. So then we would move on to the activity that I explained before, now that they have a little more information about a setting. So I'll just kind of go through this like as a student would do it, since we don't have students to do it. So I'd write the members of my group here, and then the book title is The Snowy Day, so I'd write that there. And I would start reading the book, each person in the group, you can either read it aloud or they can take turns reading it. So it says, one winter morning, Peter woke up and looked out the window. Snow had fallen during the night. It covered everything as far as he could see. So there right away, it kind of explains the setting of this story, but they could read on to find like different details about it. So they would put in here, explain the setting. On the first question, they would put a winter morning in the snow or something like that. And then how does the setting affect what is happening in the story? So throughout this story, the main character does all kinds of different things with snow, like throw snowballs, go sledding, stuff like that. So that would, if it wasn't snowing, he couldn't do those things. So that's why the setting of this book is very important. So there's a few more books, because I don't want every group to do the same book since they're presenting the information in front of the class. So each different group would get a different book. So there's that. And then after that is done, I would give them about 10 to 15 minutes to do that. Then we would do the individual assessment. It's like an informal assessment. So that would be, I had to make these myself because I couldn't print it off. But they would get these cards, and on one side, it would be a person or thing doing something, and they would have to draw the setting around this person or thing. So here's a person kicking a soccer ball, so like the setting they could draw around that would be like the sun or like a soccer goal with the grass and everything, like fans in the background, and then they would describe the setting in words on this side that they created. So I put it in my lesson plan that they need to make sure they use very descriptive words, because like the way you explain a setting could add a whole new meaning. So like just putting a sun at the top without explaining that it's sunny could mean they're playing soccer in the winter because there's still sun, stuff like that. So the next one, there's an animal. There's a flamingo on an island. They could draw like the ocean in the background, another sun at the top, and they could explain their setting and kind of create their own story out of that. Here's one. It's a guy eating an ice cream cone, and then a snowman. So kind of the same with those. They would create their own setting in the background and then turn these in. And I would probably let students, because I would obviously have more than 4 examples, because I wouldn't want them all to do the same one. So I'd probably have students pick their own, because they may be interested in things other than the one I give them. So I don't want to like keep them limited to that one specific example. But after that, they would turn that in, and then I would just like let them read, because I mean that would be the end of the lesson. So I would just have them read their book when they're done with that, so everyone has time to finish theirs, because I don't want them to rush, because I do want them to be very descriptive on this writing part over here, describing the setting. So I would let the ones that are finished read while the others finish up, and that would be the end.